Reddit Ask Me Anything. I'm a Holocaust survivor who just turned 92. I have a tattoo on my arm from Auschwitz and survived through 7 concentration camps including Blechhammer, Gross-Rosen, and Buchenwald for over 3 years and have lived life to the fullest ever since. Ask me anything. My name is Henry Flescher. I was born in Vienna, Austria on the 14th of March, 1924. I am a survivor and I'm now living in Aventura, Florida. I spend time volunteering at the Miami Holocaust Memorial and also speak at schools in the Miami area. I have 2 wonderful daughters, 3 grandchildren, one of whom is helping me with this Ask Me Anything today, and 1 great grandchild. I'm happy to be alive today, and more than happy to answer any questions you may have. What was the ride to the camp like? Were you aware of what awaited you? And if not, when did you realize? I was first sent to Dracy, a transit camp. I was then transported in a cattle car packed with people with no food or water and 1 bucket in the middle to use as a toilet. I was 16-18 at the time. The smell was unfathomable. After 6 days in the train came to stop. The guards started to count men. They selected 300 men. I was number 298. We were taken off the train. The train then continued on its way to Auschwitz and everyone was killed. I will never forget the number 298. Did anyone die midway in the 6-day train ride with no food water? Edit. I'm by no means doubting, just asking a question. As someone has mentioned below, you can survive without water for about a week. I cannot recall anyone dying during that journey, but everyone was killed soon thereafter. You mentioned you were 70 pounds when you were liberated. I'm a dietitian and have an interest in those initial weeks when you began to eat more. Was there any process for refeeding people that you are aware of? What did your diet consist of after you were liberated? How long until you reached a normal, functioning weight? Thanks so much. Some people ate too much and got very sick from that. I ate slowly and slowly recovered. It took maybe 4 to 5 months to get back to a normalish weight. Thank you for doing this. In your opinion, how accurate was the movie Schindler's List? I thought it was as close as you can come. It was very well done. Hey Mr. Flescher, what did your moment of liberation feel like? The day you got to leave the camps and start a normal life again. Did you ever feel like that day would come? My great-grandfather was one of the soldiers who liberated the camps after the war was lost and I've always been curious what emotions the prisoners felt. Edit. I meant to write when the war was won, not lost. I had a brain fart and I'm sorry. I didn't know it. I didn't understand. I was on another death march at the time from Altenburg to Waldenburg. I managed to slip away and hide in a chicken coop along the way and at that time the American convoy was advancing. I saw an American tank and an American soldier and thought he was going to kill me because I didn't know the uniform. I still left the coop and went up to them, because at that time I could barely stand up and weighed about 70 pounds. I was liberated on the 11th of April. I didn't know that day would come. I was very sick when I was liberated and could barely eat, talk, or walk. How old were you? If you don't mind me butting into the other person's question. I was born in 1924 and was a prisoner in 1942, so I was 18 and I was 21 when I was liberated. What kinds of foods were snuck in for special secret meals, if ever? I used to go out at night risking my life to steal some raw potatoes from the kitchen at Peaskirchen and at Blechhammer. I took chances. At Blechhammer some inmates caught a dog, a German Shepherd, and cooked it. It was a feast. Tasted like rabbit. That was the only time I've eaten dog, and it was the best meal I had in a long time. These days I prefer steak. Hi Mr. Flescher. My grandparents were killed in the Holocaust. Luckily they sent my dad to Palestine, later Israel. My question, were all the guards terrible or did any of the guards show any humanity or compassion? The soldiers were doing their job, and I cannot recall any compassion from any soldier. Hello Mr. Flescher. First of all, thank you for during this Ask Me Anything. Now my question is twofold. I hope that's alright. How did you keep going when it was hard? Not it wasn't hard all the time, but as a young man reading about it, I always find myself in wonder of how people got through it. Secondly, why did you keep the tattoo? I have met a couple of other Holocaust survivors with the tattoos themselves and heard their reasons, so I'm very curious to hear yours. Thank you again for doing this Ask Me Anything. I lived for tomorrow. I was always positive. They told us if Germany won the war you'd work until you die, and if they lost the war they'd kill everyone. We are born to die, but I always kept my mind positive. I'm lucky I made it out, but I lost many family members and friends during this time. It's important to remember the past. If I removed the tattoo, it's removing a part of history. The Germans wanted to remove tattoos from survivors afterwards, and I'm sure many people did, but it's a testament to the past. It shows I survived, and I'm here, and loving life. What was the transition back to civilian life like after spending 3 years in concentration camps? I wanted to travel and see the world. I went forwards, not backwards. It was a very difficult transition back into real life. I had 3/4 of my stomach taken out from an infection I got while at the camps. This was painful. Where was the first place you traveled to after your release? I went back to Brussels, and that's where I met my wife. Did average people anywhere realize at any point exactly what Hitler was doing when he had Jews and other outlying members of society taken from the populace? Was there a clear idea to people? Most people had no idea. Anyone who knew what was going on was already at the gas chamber or in the camps. I don't know what I expected, but now that I have some insight, the Holocaust sounds way darker. When the Allied forces came in, they forced civilians of local towns to see what they had allowed to happen. Eisenhower knew that people would try to deny it, so he made a point of securing as much evidence as possible. Photo, video, tours. Yet still we have duckers denying it. Hello Mr. Flesher. Firstly, thank you so much for doing this Ask Me Anything. Just a question regarding post-liberation from the camps. How did you feel returning home afterwards? What was the general attitude surrounding Jewish survivors? Going back to normal life was difficult. People didn't want to talk about the war and didn't see anything special about surviving the camps. People didn't want to discuss it. Mr. Flesher, if a God had asked you for forgiveness, what would have been your response? Never forgive, never forget. I appreciate this. It's honest and it's against a fluffy narrative. You don't forgive people who do this kind of crime and horror to others. You choose not to be angry at them, thus unchaining yourself instead. Thank you for your stories. Were you consumed by hate towards those who did it to you? Have you ever managed to forgive them? I cannot forgive, but I was never consumed by hate. Hate doesn't improve anything. I am a pre-service history and English teacher. What is something you'd want all teachers to talk about when teaching their students about the Holocaust? They need to tell story as it is. You cannot shy away from history and its brutality. We usually learn about history through books, but this is an event that happened in my lifetime. I witnessed it, and I am still alive today to discuss it. Soon, there will not be any survivors left. I am 92. Once all the survivors are gone, the skeptics will probably come into the picture, unfortunately, and that is why we need to educate everyone about what really happened. It didn't happen 500 years ago. It happened in my lifetime. Thank you so much for telling your story and for this advice. It is strongly discouraged amongst history teachers to try and compare the Holocaust to other things in an attempt to help students understand it better. When showing the Year 9 group I had last year videos of interviewed survivors, some of them said to me, "Is this real, Miss?" It's so shocking to students that is beyond comprehension a lot of the time. Some of these kids didn't know what the Holocaust was and genuinely thought it was just something from the novel we were studying. I had to spend a 60-minute lesson just trying to help them sort the fact from the fiction. You are amazing for sharing your story. When I went to my local Jewish museum and spoke with a survivor, it changed my life. I'll bet you've changed lives as well. What standout experience do you remember whilst you were in the camp? I had dysentery and growth rosen and I couldn't go to the bathroom for 3 days. This was when I almost gave up. Your will to survive has inspired me. Thank you for not giving up. Good morning, Mr. Flesher, and thank you to you and your grandchild for doing this. I'm sure it must be painful to revisit. My question is regarding the period leading up to the true horrors of your capture and detainment. Such a bland word for such horrific conditions. I realize you were very young at the time, but does anything stand out in your mind as a warning that something truly awful was happening? What indications did people have, or should they have had, both Jew and Gentile, that this was more than just setting up ghettos and segregating populations? I was too young to understand what was happening. Thank you for this Ask Me Anything. My grandparents are both survivors. Grandfather was from Warsaw and liberated at Auschwitz. Grandmother was luckily hid by a German family in a sub-basement along with her parents and sister. She suffered many gunshot wounds while running. My grandfather sadly passed away 12 years ago, but I was always very proud of what he made of himself, knowing where he came from. That said, here is my question for you. From my 86-year-old grandmother. Is he single? I got divorced after 49.5 years of marriage. We still talk to each other once in a while. I now have a girlfriend, and I'm very happy. My ex-wife got remarried shortly after the divorce to a family friend. I never stayed single for too long. My ex-wife was also hidden during the Holocaust with a Christian family. Might be a stupid question, but I'm going for it. Did you believe in a god before, and do you believe in one now? He once saw a guy at the camp kneeling and praying. He said, "What are you doing?" The guy said he was thanking God. What could you possibly be thanking God for? I'm thanking God for not making me like them. I have always believed in God. Before and after. God didn't kill the people. The Nazis did. What was the first thing you did once you were liberated? I asked the American soldier if he knew my brother. My brother had gone to US a few years before and enlisted in the army. Do you ever feel pressured to act in a certain way or live up to certain expectations? Given your experiences, when I think of other survivors like Elie Wiesel, it seems that there is great reverence towards him and that people might expect survivors to be wise and always act kindly, especially volunteering at the museum you do or giving speeches. I wonder if you ever feel as though you are living in a fishbowl and must act in a certain way. I love sharing my story, but don't even know what Reddit is. My grandson has always wanted me to share my story to as many people as possible, so he suggested this. What do you enjoy now that most of us take for granted? Life is beautiful. I love seeing my family. Have you ever considered writing a book? It seems ludicrous, but there are still deniers out there who claim the Holocaust never happened and every documented account helps. Number. Every survivor has his or her own story. I was interviewed by Spielberg and have that on tape. I think every survivor was interviewed by him to document the living survivors.